So in some ways, the rift between Saudi Arabia, UAE on the one hand, and Qatar on the other is much ado about nothing. And I don't mean that. There are differences. The differences have to do with Qatar wanting to have an independent foreign policy, which Saudi Arabia and the UAE feel is too close to political Islam, to the Islamists, to the Muslim Brotherhood. So Qatar supported the Islamists in Egypt. They supported the Islamists in Tunisia and Libya and elsewhere in a way that Saudi Arabia and UAE feel was not only wrong for the region, but wrong for their own interests, because they fear political Islam as a potential threat to their own rule. So that's number one. Number two, it's a country, Qatar, that has developed a media outfit, Al Jazeera, which is far more powerful than certain states in terms of its reach, in terms of its influence, in terms of its ability to shape public opinion, to even shape events. And Al Jazeera was a strong vocal proponent for the Arab uprisings that took place beginning in 2011, a strong critic of some of the Gulf monarchies, not Qatar, but Saudi Arabia and UAE, a militant media vehicle which Saudi Arabia and the UAE felt was threatening them and threatening the regional order. And you know, what the Saudis and the Emiratis would say is that Qatar was too close to some individuals who were not just Islamists but terrorists. So there are differences of view in terms of where Qatar wants to place itself. But the reason I say this is an overblown crisis, overblown confrontation, is that in fact Qatar has you could get Qatar to make some changes. It's not going to align itself, Saudi policy. It's not going to align itself on Emirati policy. But it is showing that under pressure, it has cut off some of its ties to certain groups. It is not particularly interested in, at this point, I think, given the arc of the Arab uprisings, it is not seeing itself on the winning side of a wave of Islamists. But what is at bottom the conflict seems to be about is Qatar wanting to assert itself in an independent way, sometimes at odds with the interests of its immediate neighbors, and Saudi Arabia and the UAE feel that this country shouldn't be able to disrupt what they're trying to do to the region. Now that's put the U.S. in an awkward position, because on the one hand, its strong allies in the region are Saudi Arabia and the Emirates, but it also has very powerful relations, strong ties with Qatar. It has one of its most important bases in the Middle East, military bases in the Middle East is in Qatar. Qatar every now and then serves a role to try to help the U.S. in diplomatic, when the U.S. needs diplomatic help from a country that has ties with all kinds of parties in the region. And so the U.S. has tried to balance the two after an initial period where it appeared that President Trump was going to side with Saudi Arabia and the UAE against Qatar. I think he quickly was maybe one of those rare cases where his advisors prevailed upon him to say, we can't be against a country or oppose a country that is housing thousands of American troops, that has been useful in many ways, and which right now is actually responding to us when we're pressuring them to do certain things. So the U.S. role from very pro-Saudi Emirates for a short period of time went from being neutral and now is kind of, on the margins, living with a crisis that doesn't serve U.S. interests, but about which at this point it feels there's not much it can do, and which is not really harming, core national security interests. So the most likely outcome is for this crisis to persist for some time.